To fight climate change, we all need to drastically cut greenhouse gas emissions, and the EU is doing its part. The EU's emissions trading system, or EU ETS, is the main tool of our European Green Deal for reaching climate neutrality by 2050. But how does it work? The EU ETS works on a system of allowances. An allowance is a permit to emit 1 ton of CO2, and each year, companies across several key sectors must surrender allowances equivalent to their CO2 emissions. Allowances can be bought from EU countries in auctions and traded afterwards by companies. To discourage companies from moving their operations to countries without strong climate policies and still emit, certain industries receive a share of their allowances for free. But in any case, the number of allowances available across industries is capped, limiting the total amount of greenhouse gases that these sectors can emit. And each year, this cap is reduced, driving overall emissions down. When a company buys an allowance, the revenue is used to fund climate and energy projects across the EU, including scaling up green technologies and modernizing energy infrastructure in lower-income EU countries, ensuring a green transition which is fair too. Until 2024, the EU ETS has covered large industry, electricity generation, and aviation in Europe. Emissions from industry and electricity generation have already decreased by some 47% compared to levels in 2005 when the system began. But now, the EU ETS is being enlarged and strengthened. Its 2030 objective to reduce emissions from 2005 levels is being raised to 62%. The system will expand to cover emissions from shipping as of 2024. And in 2026, the polluter pays principle will fully apply for aviation. For other sectors like steel, cement, or aluminium, allocation of free allowances will gradually be phased out by 2034. In parallel, the EU will gradually introduce a mechanism to ensure that an equivalent price for CO2 emissions is paid on imported goods from these sectors. All these changes will ensure that the industries covered by the ETS contribute their fair share to achieving the EU's climate ambitions. But there's more. From 2027, a new separate ETS will help reduce emissions from heating buildings, road transport, and small industry. Under this new ETS, fossil fuel suppliers will buy allowances from auctions. At the end of each year, they will surrender allowances equivalent to the emissions from the fuel they sell. Emissions across these sectors are capped and will have to decrease every year. This will encourage improvements in the energy efficiency of houses and offices and incentivize switching to low-emission transport. But to make these changes possible, citizens and businesses will need support to adopt greener alternatives. That's why EU countries will have to invest their revenue from the new ETS in climate and energy transition projects in a way which promotes the green transition for everyone. At the heart of these investments is the Social Climate Fund, mobilizing 86.7 billion euros from 2026. The fund will support the most vulnerable people to join the green transition and save money on energy costs. This could include improving home insulation, installing heat pumps, or providing discounted access to public transport. Each EU country will draw up a plan on how best to use the money from the fund. The Social Climate Fund will work in harmony with the new ETS, ensuring all citizens and businesses can play their part in reducing emissions and that the green transition leaves no one behind.